The stars had seen many empires rise and fall, but none had endured like the Valorian dominion. For 9,000 years, the Valorians had ruled their corner of the galaxy with an iron fist, and they had grown to believe that nothing could ever challenge their power. They controlled 4,000 star systems, commanded fleets that blotted out the light of suns, and had crushed every rebellion that dared to rise against them. They were ancient when humanity still lived in caves, and they looked upon the younger species of the galaxy with contempt and disdain. To them, humans were nothing more than useful insects, short-lived creatures who bred quickly and died even quicker. But humans had something the Valorians did not understand, something that would prove to be their undoing. In the year 2347, humanity had spread across 200 worlds, and they were known throughout the galaxy not as warriors or conquerors, but as healers. Wherever there was suffering, human doctors would come. Wherever there was plague, human nurses would arrive. Wherever there was pain, human hands would reach out to help. The Mercy Flotilla was the pride of the United Terran Medical Corps. 12 beautiful ships painted white as snow, each one marked with the ancient red cross that meant the same thing in every language. We come to heal, not to harm. 3,400 souls served aboard those ships, doctors and nurses, surgeons and medics, counselors and caretakers. They came from Earth and Mars and the colonies beyond. They came from 12 different species who had joined humanity's mission of compassion. They were the best and brightest, and they had dedicated their lives to a simple belief that every life was worth saving. Commander Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the UTS Compassion and watched the stars streak past as the flotilla traveled through hyperspace. She was 62 years old, and she had spent 40 of those years healing the sick and wounded across 100 worlds. Her hair had turned gray in service, and her hands bore the calluses of 10,000 surgeries. "Commander," her first officer said, "we are receiving the distress signal again. The plague on Lesser 4 is spreading faster than their local medical teams can handle." Sarah nodded and felt her heart ache for the people of that distant world. Lesser 4 was a vassal planet of the Valorian Dominion, but its people had begged humanity for help when the bioplague began killing their children. The Valorians had done nothing to help their own subjects, so the humans had answered the call. "How long until we arrive?" Sarah asked. 6 hours. Commander, we will enter Valorian space in approximately 2 hours. Sarah felt a small knot of worry in her stomach. The Valorians had never welcomed human ships in their territory, but surely they would not interfere with a mercy mission. Surely even the ancient empire would not attack doctors. She was wrong. High Prelate Kethvorin sat upon his throne on the distant world of Velar, prime, and listened to his admirals deliver their reports. He was old even by Valorian standards, nearly 800. Years had passed since his birth, and he had grown tired of hearing about the humans and their humanitarian missions. "These creatures insult us," he declared, his voice echoing through the great hall of the Sanctum of Eternity. "They enter our space without permission, and they heal our vassals without our blessing. They make us look weak." His advisors nodded in agreement, for none dared to disagree with the High Prelate. "The Mercy Flotilla will reach Thesser 4 in 6 hours, Admiral Vexton reported. "Shall the First order the 7th Talon Fleet to escort them through our space?" Kethvorin's lips curled into a cold smile. "No," he said. "Order the 7th Talon Fleet to intercept them and destroy them." Admiral Vex then hesitated for just a moment. "High Prelate, they are medical ships. They carry no weapons and pose no threat. The other species of the galaxy may react badly if we let them react," Kethvorin interrupted. "The humans need to learn their place, and the galaxy needs to remember why they fear the Dominion. Destroy the ships and leave no survivors." 2 hours later, the Mercy Flotilla dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Valorian territory and found 60 warships waiting for them. Commander Sarah Chun felt her blood run cold as she stared at the viewscreen. The Valorian vessels were massive and bristling with weapons, and they had formed a blockade that stretched across the entire transit corridor. "This is the United Terran Medical Ship Compassion," Sarah broadcast on all frequencies. "We are an unarmed humanitarian convoy responding to a medical emergency on Nesser 4. We carry no weapons and we mean no harm. Please allow us to pass." The response came in the form of weapons fire. The first volley struck the UTS Hope, and Sarah watched in horror as the medical ship erupted in flames. 300 doctors and nurses died in an instant, their bodies scattered among the stars. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Sarah screamed, but she knew it was hopeless. Their ships had no weapons, no shields, no way to fight back against the Valorian assault. One by one, the white ships died. The UTS Mercy was torn apart by torpedo fire. The UTS Healing Hand was cut in half by plasma beams. The UTS Kindness exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the darkness of space. Sarah watched her friends die. She watched doctors who had saved thousands of lives get vaporized in seconds. She watched nurses who had held the hands of dying children get blown into the void. "Get to the escape pods," she ordered her crew. "Someone has to survive. Someone has to tell the galaxy what happened here." Nurse Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka was 26 years old, and she had joined the medical corps because she wanted to help people. Now she found herself running through corridors filled with smoke and fire, clutching a data core that contained footage of the massacre. She reached the last escape shuttle just as UTS Compassion began to break apart. She could hear Commander Chun's voice over the intercom, calm and steady even in the face of death. "Go. Yuki, tell them what they did. Tell them we died trying to save lives." Yuki launched the shuttle and watched through tears as the Compassion exploded behind her. She was the only survivor of the Mercy Flotilla, the only witness to the murder of 3,400 healers. 3 weeks later, she sat in a small room on Earth and watched as President Marcus Webb reviewed the footage she had brought back. He was a tall man with kind eyes, but those eyes had turned hard as stone as he watched the Valorians slaughter unarmed doctors. When the footage ended, the room was silent. President Webb removed his glasses and set them down on the table. He took a deep breath and spoke 4 words that would echo through history. "Wake the sleeping legion." The Valorians had made their fatal decision, and now they would learn what happened when you fired on doctors. The galaxy waited for humanity to respond, and the galaxy heard nothing but silence. 3 weeks passed after the massacre of the Mercy Flotilla, and the humans said not a single word. Their ambassadors left Valorian space without explanation. Their trading ships stopped arriving at neutral ports. Their communication channels went dark across every frequency. High Prelate Kethforin sat upon his throne and laughed at the reports his spies brought him. "You see," he told his council, "the humans have learned their place at last. They bark like small animals, but when faced with true power, they run and hide. This is why the Dominion has ruled for 9,000 years, because we understand that strength is the only language the universe respects." His advisors praised his wisdom and told him he had achieved a great victory. They said that the other species of the galaxy would now remember why they feared the Valorian Dominion. They said that humanity had been broken. They were fools, every one of them. Ambassador Xylith of the Corthan Collective was not a fool. She was 700 years old and had witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of lesser empires. She had studied humanity since their first contact with galactic civilization, and she understood something that the Valorians did not. She requested an audience with High Prelate Kethvorin and traveled to Vela Prime to deliver a warning. "You have made a terrible mistake," she told the ancient ruler. "The human silence is not the silence of surrender, it is the silence of preparation. You do not understand what you have awakened. Kefvorin waved his hand dismissively. The humans are weak, he said. They waste their resources on healing and helping instead of building weapons and training warriors. What could they possibly do against the might of the Dominion? Xylith leaned forward, and her ancient eyes were filled with something that looked almost like fear. Humans do not fight like us, she said. When our species go to war, we fight for territory or resources or pride, and we stop when the cost becomes too great. But humans are different. When humans truly go to war, they do not stop until their enemy is utterly destroyed. They are persistent predators. They evolved by chasing their prey across endless distances until it collapsed from exhaustion. And now you have given them a reason to chase you. What reason? Kefvorin asked with contempt. You killed their healers, Xylith said. You attacked the one thing they hold sacred above all others. To humans, their doctors are not just workers who fix broken bodies. They are symbols of everything humanity believes in. They represent compassion and mercy and hope. You did not just destroy 12 ships, High Prelate. You spat upon the very soul of their species. Kefvorin laughed again. Then they are even more foolish than I thought, he said. Compassion is weakness, and weakness must be punished. The Dominion will endure as it always has. Xylith stood and prepared to leave. I came here as a courtesy, she said. The Korthan Collective will remain neutral in the conflict to come, but I wanted you to understand what you face. When the humans come, and they will come, remember that I tried to warn you. She was gone before Kefvorin could respond. The High Prelate dismissed her words as the ravings of a senile old diplomat, but he did not know what was happening across human space. On 200 worlds, humanity was awakening. For the first time since the Soul Unification Wars 3 centuries ago, the United Terran Council activated Protocol, Crimson, a state of total war mobilization that had never been used against an alien species. Factories that had built medical scanners and healing pods began forging plasma cannons and torpedo launches. Shipyards that had constructed mercy ships began assembling warships. Research facilities that had worked on curing diseases began developing weapons. And the people came. They came by the millions at first, then by the billions. They lined up at recruitment centers on every human world. And they did not come because they were forced. They came because they chose to. Private Elena Rodriguez was 19 years old when she enlisted in the United Terran Marine Corps. Her mother had been a nurse aboard the UTS Kindness, and Elena had received the notification of her death on the same day she signed her enlistment papers. Why are you joining? The recruitment officer asked her. Because my mother died trying to save lives, Elena answered. She was the kindest person I ever knew, and they killed her for that kindness. I want to make sure no one ever kills another doctor again. Her story was repeated across human space. Every soldier, every pilot, every engineer had a connection to the 3,400. Some had lost family members. Some had lost friends. Some had been saved by doctors in the past and wanted to honor their memory. They did not fight for glory or conquest. They fought for the healers who would never heal again. Admiral Helena Vance stood in the command center of the UTS, Retribution, and reviewed the fleet that had gathered under her command. She was 58 years old and had served in the Terran Navy for 35 years. But she had never seen anything like this. 12,000 warships had assembled at the edge of human space. They had been built in secret over the past 3 weeks, constructed with a speed and efficiency that should have been impossible. But humans had a way of doing impossible things when they were motivated. The ships were painted black as the void between stars, and each one bore a single marking on its hull, a white medical cross with red drops falling from it like tears or like blood. Admiral Vance looked at the image of her daughter that sat on her console. Dare May Vance had been a pediatric surgeon aboard the UTS Hope, and she had died trying to protect the children in her care. The Valorians had killed her along with everyone else. Admiral, her communications officer, said, "The fleet is ready. All 12,000 ships report combat readiness. What are your orders?" Helena touched her daughter's image one last time and then turned to face her crew. "Open a channel to the entire fleet," she commanded. When the channel was open, she spoke the words that would begin the war. 3 weeks ago, the Valorian Dominion murdered our doctors. They killed healers whose only crime was trying to save lives. They thought this would make us afraid. They thought this would make us bow. They were wrong. She paused and let her words sink in. Today, we go to war not for territory, not for resources, not for glory. We go to war for the 3,400. We go to war for every doctor who ever held a dying patient's hand. We go to war for the idea that compassion matters. And we will not stop until the galaxy understands that you do not attack our healers. The fleet began to move, and the stars themselves seemed to tremble. The silence was over, and the storm had begun. The human fleet entered Valorian space without warning and without mercy. Admiral Helena Vance led the first Terran expeditionary force through the border systems like a knife through flesh, and she broadcast only one message to every world they passed. You killed our doctors. You killed the hands that would have healed your own children. There will be no mercy. There will only be memory. The Valorians scrambled to respond. High Prelate Kethvorin ordered his legendary Talon fleets to intercept the human invaders. These were the same warships that had crushed rebellions for millennia. These were the vessels that had made the Dominion feared across the galaxy. Surely they would destroy these upstart humans. The Battle of Karth's Gate would prove him wrong. 400 Valorian warships gathered at the strategic choke point, commanded by Admiral Vexton himself, the same officer who had ordered the attack on the Mercy Flotilla. He was confident of victory. After all, his fleet outnumbered the approaching human force by 2-1. 200 human ships dropped out of hyperspace and faced the Valorian armada. They are fools, Vexton laughed. They send only 200 ships against 400. This will be easier than destroying their medical convoy. He gave the order to attack, and his fleet surged forward. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Valorian 7th Talon fleet had ceased to exist. Every single one of their 400 ships had been destroyed or captured. Admiral Vexton's flagship was torn apart by human torpedoes, and he died screaming as his bridge collapsed around him. The humans lost only 23 ships. Across the galaxy, military analysts studied the battle recordings and tried to understand what had happened. The Valorian ships were larger and more heavily armed. Their crews had centuries of combat experience. By every measure, they should have won. But they had not understood what they were fighting. Human pilots performed maneuvers that should have killed them, turned so sharp and acceleration so extreme that the Gi forces should have crushed their bodies. But they survived through sheer force of will, pushing through pain that would have made any other species black out. Human gunners fired with accuracy that seemed almost supernatural, landing shot after shot on critical systems while their own ship shook and burned around them. Human damage control teams worked miracles, keeping ships fighting long after they should have been destroyed. They sealed breaches with their own bodies. They rerouted power through burning conduits. They refused to let their vessels die. And when Valorian Marines tried to board human ships, they discovered something terrifying. Private Elena Rodriguez was part of the defense team on the yacht's Vengeance, and she fought with a fury that shocked the Valorian soldiers. She took 3 plasma burns to her armor and kept fighting. She lost 2 fingers to a Valorian blade and kept fighting. She fought until every enemy on her ship was dead or captured. When her commanding officer asked her how she had kept going, she showed him the photo she carried in her chest pocket, her mother, wearing her nurse's uniform, smiling at the camera. "They killed her," Elena said. "I promised myself I would make them remember that mistake forever." Every human soldier carried a photo like that. Every pilot had a name written on their console. Every engineer had memorized the face of someone who had died aboard the Mercy flotilla. They were not fighting for territory or glory. They were fighting for the dead, and the dead gave them strength that the Valorians could not match. But the humans did something that confused their enemies even more than their fighting spirit. When they captured Valorian worlds, they did not burn them. They did not enslave the population. They did not take revenge on the innocent. Instead, they sent doctors. The people of HFY, the same world that had begged for help before the massacre, watched in amazement as human medical ships landed in their cities. The plague that had been killing their children for months was cured in weeks. Human doctors worked alongside local healers, teaching them new techniques and sharing their knowledge freely. "Why?" asked Governor Thelvin of HFY. "We are part of the Dominion. We are your enemies. Why do you heal us?" The human doctor looked at him with tired but kind eyes. "Because you are sick," she said. "That is the only reason we need. We are not at war with your people. We are at war with the Empire that killed our healers. You are not our enemies. You are our patients." Word spread across Valorian space. The humans conquered with weapons, but they ruled with medicine. Worlds that might have resisted to the death instead surrendered without firing a shot. Why fight for an empire that ignored their plagues when they could join a people who healed them? 3 vassal species defected to humanity within the first 6 months of the war. They did not switch sides because they feared human weapons. They switched sides because they had tasted human compassion for the first time. High Prelate Kethvorn received these reports with growing rage. "They mock us," he screamed at his council. "They take our worlds and then pretend to be kind. It is weakness disguised as strategy." But his advisors were beginning to doubt. One of them, a young minister named Velsara, dared to speak. "High Prelate," she said carefully, "perhaps the humans understand something we do not. They have taken 40 of our systems in 6 months, and they have done it with far fewer ships than we expected. Their soldiers fight like demons, but their doctors treat our wounded just as they treat their own. Our people are beginning to question why they should remain loyal to an empire that never healed them." Kethvorn struck her across the face. "The Dominion has ruled for 9,000 years, he roared. "We rule through strength, not through kindness. Kindness is weakness, and I will prove it." He turned to his military commanders. "Deploy all remaining Talon fleets to the inner systems. If we cannot stop them at the borders, we will stop them at the heart of our empire. And begin preparations for the endless night. If the humans want to fight for their precious compassion, we will show them what true power looks like." The council fell silent at the mention of the endless night. It was a weapon that had not been used in 6,000 years, a planet killer capable of destroying entire worlds. Minister Velsara looked at the High Prelate with horror in her eyes. She finally understood that he would rather burn the galaxy than admit he had been wrong. But she also understood something else. The humans would not stop. They could not stop. They were fighting for something more important than victory. They were fighting for the idea that healers should be protected, and they would die before they let that idea be destroyed. The war was far from over, and the worst was yet to come. The war entered its 2nd year, and the Valorian Dominion began to crack. 40% of their space had fallen to human forces or defected to the Terran cause, and the ancient empire that had stood for 9,000 years was bleeding from 1,000 wounds. Regional governors declared independence rather than wait for the humans to arrive. Talon fleets fought each other over scraps of territory. The unity that had held the Dominion together was shattering like glass. But High Prelate Kethvorn refused to see the truth. He sat in his throne room on Velo Prime and raged against his failures. He executed advisors who brought him bad news. He ordered impossible counterattacks that only resulted in more destroyed fleets. He had become a madman wearing the mask of an emperor. The endless night, he commanded. It is time to end this war once and for all. If we cannot defeat the humans through battle, we will destroy their homeworld and break their spirit forever. The endless night was the most terrible weapon the Dominion had ever created. It was a massive ship, larger than most space stations, equipped with a weapon capable of cracking a planet's core. It had been used only once in Valorian history, 6,000 years ago, to destroy a world that had dared to rebel. Now Kethvorin planned to use it against Earth itself. Admiral Lex Rawl was given command of the Endless Night and a fleet of 500 warships to escort it. Their mission was to travel through 3 neutral systems, avoiding the main human battle lines and strike at the heart of humanity. "This is madness," Dexral told his officers in private. "Even if we destroy Earth, the humans will not surrender. They will fight even harder. And the other species of the galaxy will turn against us completely." But he had his orders, and disobedience meant death. The Endless Night fleet departed Vela Prime and began its journey toward Earth. Ambassador Xyleth of the Corthan Collective learned of the plan through her network of spies, and she faced the hardest decision of her 700-year life. The Corthan Collective had remained neutral throughout the war. They had always remained neutral. It was how they had survived for so long in a dangerous galaxy. But this was different. Xyleth gathered the Corthan High Council and spoke to them with passion she had not felt in centuries. The Valorians planned to destroy Earth, she told them. If we allow their fleet to pass through our space, we become accomplices to genocide. And if the humans survive, which they will, because humans always survive, they will remember that we did nothing. But if we stop the fleet, the Dominion will declare war on us, one council member argued. "We are not warriors. We are merchants and diplomats." Xyleth nodded. "That is true," she said. "But there is another option. We do not have to fight alone." She revealed her plan, and the council debated for 3 days. In the end, they made a choice that would change the galaxy forever. The Corthan Collective sent messages to every species that had ever suffered under Valorian rule. They sent messages to the enemies of the Dominion. They sent messages to neutral powers who feared what the galaxy would become if humanity fell. And one by one, those species responded. The Terra Compact was signed by 17 different civilizations, 4 of them former Valorian vassal states that had defected to humanity. It was the largest military alliance in galactic history, and it was formed not to conquer, but to protect. "Why?" asked President Marcus Webb when he learned of the alliance. "Why do you risk so much for us?" Ambassador Xyleth smiled at him through the viewscreen. "Because we have watched your species for 2 centuries, she said. "We have seen how you treat the worlds you conquer, you heal them. We have seen how you treat prisoners of war, you give them medical care. We have seen how you could have become tyrants, and instead you chose to become doctors. The galaxy needs more species like you, not fewer." She paused, and her expression became serious. "And because if the Dominion is willing to use planet killers, none of us are safe. Today they aim at Earth. Tomorrow they might aim at our worlds. We must stand together or fall separately." The Endless Night fleet reached the Corthan border and demanded passage. They found the combined forces of 12 species waiting for them. The battle was not long. The Valorian escort fleet was outnumbered 10-1, and even they could see that victory was impossible. Many of their ships surrendered rather than fight. Those who did fight were destroyed in minutes. Admiral Dex Rao watched his fleet dissolve around him and made one final choice. He could activate the Endless Night's weapon and try to destroy as many enemy ships as possible, or he could accept defeat. He thought of his family on Vela Prime. He thought of the millions who would die if he fired. He thought of the war and the death and the endless cycle of violence. And then he thought of the human doctors who had healed Valorian prisoners, enemies who had tried to kill them. "Power down the weapon," he ordered. "All hands, prepare to surrender." His officers stared at him in shock. "The High Prelate will have us executed," one of them said. "Perhaps," Vexrol replied. "But I would rather die knowing I made the right choice than live knowing I burned a world. Contact the enemy fleet and tell them we surrender unconditionally." The Endless Night was captured intact, and Admiral Vexrol was taken prisoner. He expected to be tortured or executed, but instead he was taken to a medical bay and examined by human doctors. "You are suffering from stress-related heart problems," the doctor told him. "We can treat that. Please, sit down and let us help you." Vexrol stared at her in disbelief. "Why?" he asked. "I was coming to destroy your homeworld. Why would you help me?" The doctor shrugged. "Because you are sick, and I am a healer. That is what healers do. That is what your leaders killed 3,400 people for trying to do." For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Vexrol wept. He finally understood what his empire had never understood. True strength was not the power to destroy. It was the courage to heal even your enemies. When news of the Endless Night's capture reached Vela Prime, High Prelate Kethvorn flew into a rage so violent that he collapsed from exhaustion. His physicians treated him, but they could see the truth in his eyes. He was no longer thinking clearly. He was no longer fit to rule. But no one dared to remove him from power. The war would end on Vela Prime, and it would end soon. But first, the humans had to reach the throne world. And they were coming. The human fleet arrived at Vela Prime on a cold morning in the second year of the war. 8,000 warships surrounded the ancient throne world, the heart of an empire that had ruled for 9,000 years. Their black hulls blocked out the light of the Valorian sun, and their weapons were aimed at the orbital defense platforms that ringed the planet. Admiral Helena Vance stood on the bridge of the UTS Retribution and stared at the world below. This was the place where High Prelate Kethvorn had given the order to destroy the Mercy Flotilla. This was where her daughter's death had been commanded. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we are receiving a transmission from the surface. It is not from the High Prelate." The view screen flickered, and the face of Minister Velsara appeared. She looked exhausted, but her eyes burned with determination. "Admiral Vance," she said, "I speak for the people of Vela Prime. The High Prelate has retreated to the Sanctum of Eternity with his personal guard, but the rest of us no longer follow him. We have seen how you treat the worlds you conquer. We have heard the stories from Thesserfor and the other planets. We do not want to fight." Helena felt a weight lift from her heart. She had been prepared for a long and bloody siege, but perhaps there was another way. "What are you proposing?" she asked. "We will lower our planetary shields and deactivate our defense platforms," Velsara said. "We will allow your forces to land without resistance. All we ask is that you treat our people as you have treated the others, not as enemies, but as patients who need to be healed." Helena nodded. "We accept your terms," she said. "The Dominion is over, Minister. What rises in its place will be decided by your people, not by us. We are not here to rule. We are here to end a war and bring justice for our fallen healers." The planetary shields fell, and human ships descended through the atmosphere. The people of Vela Prime had been told for 9,000 years that aliens were dangerous. That strength was the only virtue. That compassion was weakness. Now they watched as human soldiers landed in their cities and immediately began setting up medical stations. Doctors treated the sick. Engineers repaired damaged infrastructure. Soldiers handed out food and supplies to those in need. An old Valorian woman approached a human medic and stared at him with confusion in her ancient eyes. "I do not understand," she said. "We are the enemy. Our leaders killed your healers. Why do you help us?" The medic smiled at her. "Because helping people is what we do," he said. "We cannot bring back the 3,400, but we can honor their memory by doing what they would have done. They would have healed you, so that is what we will do." The old woman wept, and she was not the only one. Across Vela Prime, the same scene repeated itself 1,000 times. Humans helping Valorians, conquerors becoming caretakers, enemies becoming healers. But the war was not quite over. High Prelate Kethvorn sat in the Sanctum of Eternity, surrounded by his last loyal guards. The ancient chamber had witnessed the coronation of every Valorian ruler for 9 millennia, and now it would witness the end of the last one. He had refused to surrender. He had refused to negotiate. He would die as he had lived, believing that strength was everything and compassion was nothing. The doors of the sanctum opened, and Kethvorn expected to see human soldiers with weapons drawn. Instead, a single woman walked into the chamber. She wore a white uniform with a red cross on the shoulder, and she carried nothing but a medical kit. She was young by any species standards, and her face was marked with grief that had aged her beyond her years. Kethvorn recognized her from the intelligence reports. This was Nurse Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka, the sole survivor of the Mercy Flotilla. "Where are your soldiers?" he demanded. "Where are your weapons?" Yuki stopped in the center of the chamber and looked at the ancient ruler. Her eyes held no hatred, no fury, no desire for revenge, only a deep and terrible sadness. "I did not come here with soldiers," she said. "I came alone. I wanted to see the person who killed everyone I loved. I wanted to understand why." Kethvorn laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "You are a fool," he said. "I could kill you with a single command. My guards could tear you apart in seconds." "Yes," Yuki agreed. "You could, but you will not. Do you know why?" She opened her medical kit and took out a simple healing device. "Because killing me would not change anything," she continued. "Your empire is already gone. Your people have already chosen compassion over cruelty. Everything you built for 9,000 years has fallen apart in 2 years. And it happened because you made one mistake. You attacked doctors." She stepped closer to him, and his guards moved to stop her, but Kethvorn raised his hand. "Let her speak," he said. "I want to hear what wisdom this child thinks she has." Yuki stood before the throne of the Valorian Dominion and spoke words that would echo through history. "Your people killed everyone I loved," she said. 3,400 doctors and nurses and healers who never hurt anyone. My friends, my teachers, my family. They died screaming while your ships burned them in the void. I watched it happen, and I carry that memory with me every moment of every day." Tears streamed down her face, but her voice remained steady. "And I am still a nurse," she said. "I came here with a medical kit, not a weapon. I came here to heal, not to kill. Do you understand now? Do you understand what you destroyed and why it destroyed you?" She held up the healing device. "Your heart is weak," she said. "I can see it in your color and the way you breathe. You are dying, High Prelate. Let me help you." Kethvorn stared at her in silence. For the first time in his 800 years of life, he had no words. This woman, this tiny, fragile, insignificant human, had lost everything to his order, and she stood before him, offering to heal him. He felt something he had never felt before: shame. The old ruler lowered his head, and when he looked up again, there were tears in his eyes. "I was wrong," he whispered. "I was wrong about everything." He did not resist when his guards were disarmed. He did not resist when he was taken from the sanctum. He did not resist when human doctors examined him and treated his failing heart. The war was over. The Valorian dominion was dissolved, not through conquest, but through choice. Its people chose to be healed rather than ruled. They chose compassion over strength. They chose to follow the example of the species they had once despised. A century later, the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. The Mercy Accords protected medical personnel across all civilizations. The white ships flew again, crewed by 100 different species. And on every hull, alongside the Red Cross, a small inscription honored those who had died. We remember the 3,400. We heal in their name. The Valorians had thought humanity's compassion was weakness. They learned too late that it was their greatest strength and the only force in the universe, powerful enough to transform an enemy into a friend.